had someone write me. I'm going to share this today as a post because it's a pretty common feeling by most people. Dear Morgan, I ended up meeting a really nice person. Ever since we talked almost every day, we often find ourselves lost in conversation without even realizing it. Hours go by. We've seen each other twice a week since I've returned back to my town. And things are progressing naturally and the pace doesn't feel forced. I'm really happy. We both share similar values and are equally excited when spending time together. Unfortunately, on my end, I struggle with two thoughts. One, I find myself overthinking my words or actions on either of our ends. It sucks because it puts me in a constant vicious cycle. For example, I saw this person yesterday. We had a nice time and they weren't feeling well. And when I checked in on the next morning, I just wrote "Good morning, love" in the message as we both started using terms of endearment. But when she wrote back, she replied "Good morning," followed by letting me know how she felt. And I worried she didn't reply back "Good morning, love." And so I started wondering what my worst case thoughts were. What if that person's losing interest? Have I done something wrong? This is just an example of the kind of thing I struggle with overthinking. So number two, this has become less of an issue with time, but at times I still don't believe in myself as I should. Said differently, I consider myself more lucky to be with this person than they are with me. I absolutely hate that I sell myself short, but unfortunately that's always been a theme. My mind sometimes just can't accept that I'm seeing such an all-around incredible person. I started feeling as I don't deserve this person. All in, I struggle to see the big picture consistently. I'll focus on minor things and they blow up in my mind as opposed to focusing on many positives. Our relationship is growing deeper. We both love spending time together. We're both getting to know each other more, which I'm grateful for. I just wish I could spend more time thinking about those kind of things. Any piece of advice would be appreciated. So I get a lot of messages like this, sort of similar. I deal with a lot of these things, and I mean, I dealt with that when I was young, for sure. I mean, it's tough when we worry about losing what we have. And that's the thing, from a place of where we think, we worry about not having. And there's never reasons why that can occur. One is when we lose something, then we think we're not good enough, and it's just proof that we're not good enough, because here I go again, losing the thing that's really important to me. I'm obviously not good enough to have things I want, or I'm not worthy of that thing. The problem with that mindset is that it really talks about control and ownership, and that's where it kind of stems. There's lots of things I have to say on this. Just let me gather. And so the first thing is like the way we perceive ourselves. And so when we see ourselves as not enough, then we create that situation through our conversation, our thinking. We link it with this control feature of, what if I'm not doing it right? Well, if you're not doing it right, you overthinking it's going to make sure you don't do it right for sure, because you're not actually acting as yourself. So let me put it in perspective a job interview, because we hear in theater and in interviews and it says be yourself, right? Everyone else is taken, be yourself or be yourself. The quality of that advice, although it's cliche, is that when you're being yourself, what that means is that if you don't get something, you weren't meant to have it. If you are someone different and you lose it, then that's really sad, because the person you weren't, or the person that you are, didn't show up, and the person you weren't showed up and ruined it for you. That's a really weird way to lose a job, is to do it. It's literally like sending someone else to an interview and they're going, how did it go? Did I get the job? And they're like, yeah, but you can't show up to it because they don't expect you. And when you do show up, you lose the job because it was never you they interviewed. I hope that makes sense. But I mean, that's really the thing is, but why do we start faking it? So there's the control issue, is that if we guess and become what they want us to be, then we'll earn it, and then we'll win it, and then it's ours. But it's actually pretty fraudulent, because what you want to own is them. And you don't need to own that. You just need to own yourself and have faith that if this person isn't really right for you, or if they are, then you being yourself is the best version of you to keep that relationship. It's certainly the easiest. It takes less energy. You free up a ton of bandwidth. And so one way I deal with that often is when I want something too bad, I check in and realize when I will things, I make it worse. Often when I want someone to see my value is when they don't see it at all. It's when I actually just give up and just be me that I get praise and they see me, which is really weird, because I wish it was the other way around for everybody. But That's not been my experience. And I just think it's a lot easier not to care. And what will show up for you might be better. Like if you have faith that if you didn't get a job, as I'm using this as a metaphor for a relationship, if it didn't work out, that the next person to come along would be even better. How many times have you wanted something that you would have given your soul for maybe, or some sort of, you just would have given anything to, and then it doesn't work out, and the next thing that comes along is 100 times better than you thought imaginable. Just imagine if your hands were full, if you got what you wanted and it was in your hands, you know, you couldn't get rid of it. You could never get that opportunity to grow to what you really wanted, what you didn't even know you deserved, or you didn't even know was possible because you were so focused on this one thing. And focusing on it because you love that person is very different than focusing on it than because you think you need it to be of worth. And so it's kind of like I tell people, I love my wife. I want to be married to her, but I'm at a point in life where I don't need to. And when I did need it, I made it worse because I would overlove. I would try too hard. I would try to make up for things that maybe it was her work versus mine. And now that there's this separation of who I am and what I can be on my own and who she can be on her own, that's a healthier relationship because it avoids codependence. Because anytime you're like, I'm not sure I'm doing things right or I'm not good enough, it's like you're hoping that other person will fill you up, and that's codependency. But if you can look at it and say, I'm just going to be me, and if she doesn't like that I, wrote, hey, how you feeling, love? And she goes, oh, it's too soon or whatever. Well, okay, that's about her. You can change your behavior, but you're not going to change who you are because you can still be loving it. And that's why we train when I work is that you are 100% of relationships you have. Because the relationship you have with yourself and how you perceive yourself will mirror what you get into your partnership. And so I hear a lot of women, they're like, oh, I just date jerks. I'm like, oh. And so that's not your fault that they're jerks, but it may be your fault that you're leaving room in your life for those people. And why are you attracting jerks? What do they see in you that they see as vulnerable, that they want to take advantage of, or they see that they fit with you? And when those people grow to learn to love themselves, then their relationships change because you have to love yourself so much that it rejects the concept of anything less. I think I heard a comedian once say, I said this differently, but the comedian says it in an interesting way. He said, if you love yourself a 2 out of 10, and someone comes along and loves you a 4 out of 10, you're like, wow, that's so much. It's like, of course it is. That's double of what you love yourself, but it's still less than half. And you need to love yourself so much that it rejects anything, because it's not arrogant to love yourself. It's a necessity because we teach people how to treat us by the way we treat ourselves. And the moment you treat yourself as less than, then it's really hard for someone to see you as more. Even if they do, it's wasted. I mean, why would I treat you better than you treat yourself? That's selfish. That's selfish to make me try to love you more than you love yourself. And so I dated a girl that was a size, 14 to 16. She saw herself as fat. I thought she was beautiful, but it was really hard to get her to see that because she couldn't see past her own body dysmorphia, her own limitations on how she saw her body. And so that makes it tough. But if you accepted yourself and you could receive that love, imagine how far and healthy the relationship could be. And that's just like one example. Start to look for things you do, the way you look at yourself. Think about this, like, how angry have you been at people in the past for not loving you the way you want them to? And then ask yourself if you're loving yourself the way that you want them to. And if the answer is no, there's the work. It's time that you realize that what you see on the outside is just a reflection of what's going on the inside, and that you're worthy of love. Look, the idea of what it is to be human is not to be perfect. It's to realize how broken and bruised, but also perfect and wonderful we are. It's to accept that you're a good person and a bad person, that you're beautiful and ugly, that you're smart and stupid. You're all those things, because so am I, and that's the human condition. And to reject that and wish it to be different isn't to accept what this condition is, which means you're going to be miserable, because you're always going to want for something that's impossible. You're going to want to be perfect, and you're not going to be. And so I love the goal, or I don't like goals so much, but that's another story. You might have watched that video. But I love the objective. I love that you're wanting to do your very best and to dream the impossible dream. But that's the thing; it's impossible. And so the strategy of not settling until you get there is fine, knowing that it won't exist. But it's the attachment to that feeling of I need to be better, I need to be good enough, I need to be lovable, I need to be worthy. And that's the funny thing. It's like when we're born, you look at a child and you're like, they're perfect. Well, what happens? because that kid logically is not perfect. They can't talk, they can't do things for themselves, they can't even use the bathroom in the toilet, they have to go and change their diaper. Like, babies are just not perfect, but they are. They are, and we all know it. That the most beautiful thing it can be is a newborn baby, unblemished. And then we start to tell stories as life goes on that we're just not worthy anymore. And that's just not true. Because this experience was designed for you to be imperfect, so you could have wisdom and grow. And so don't beat yourself up that you don't think you're enough. And so to the person who wrote and shared their heart with this person, if this person really loves you, they'll see you, and you don't have to be anything but you. And if you can't be you around them, then they don't really love you, and they got their work to do on their own. And I would worry less about what you say, more about how you say it and who you are. Your intent is more important than how people are impacted, because how people receive information from a place of love, that's up to them. And if you're being loving, bro, you could write me and say, "Good morning, love," and I would never think anything of it. You all can, by the way. And many of you do. And I tell all my bros and girls that I love them from a place of just being a caring human being, because I want what's best for them. And I've had a couple people think that's weird, but I don't really stop doing it, because, well, the moment you start changing yourself for someone else, that's unhealthy for that relationship. And it's unhealthy for being the truth of who you are. I remember one time I was walking downstairs in Peterborough, and I had my best friend with me, the best man at my wedding. And I had an old car that didn't have electric locks. And the way it was parked is that his door was first before I walked around the car. So just to save time, I'd always just open up his door and then walk away. He'd open the door and get in, and he'd unlock my door. And my girlfriend at the time was getting off a bus and just happened to be where construction workers were. And I didn't know this happened until later, but they saw me, and she heard them and say, "Hey, look at those two gay guys." I don't think they use such a nice term. And so she told me that, and at first I was like, "Oh my goodness, I'm not going to open the door anymore for him." It was my first reaction because of the judgment. And then I went 2 seconds later, wait a sec, I don't give a shit what those people think. I'm not going to stop being nice to my friend just because these assholes have judgment and fears about being kind to one another. And so I just really encourage you to be the truth of who you are, because there's someone out there that will love you just as you are, but the first thing that has to start is in the mirror with the person. You have to love yourself the way you want them to. That's it. That's what it boils down to. And so I hope that brings some clarity, and I appreciate the question, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks for asking, and if anyone has any questions, please send me a message. Love to hear more of what you want as this content. We appreciate your membership. Much love. See ya.